5:35, we will reconvene the Board of Finance budget hearings for the budget year 2018-2019. Today is Thursday, March 1st, 5:30. Welcome, everyone. Okay, tonight is the technical discussion meeting of the Board of Finance. We will review both the city budget and the Board of Education budget. Since there are members of the Board of Education here tonight, I think we'll start with the Board of Education budget and open the floor for discussion. On the city budget, historically we've gone page by page and department by department.
Right.
We can certainly do that with the Board of Ed budget if people would like, otherwise we can have a general discussion.
I think general, because we have nothing to say on the page by page.
I would agree with that. Anyone feel differently? Joe?
You want to go page by page?
Well, I don't want to go page by page, but we can address certain areas.
Absolutely,
Right,
we can
yeah.
address any area that the commission, that board members would like to address. So,
Maybe you want to go page by page.
I mean, I could go through, we can go through pretty quickly, if it would be easier. If there's a number of items you'd like to discuss specifically, I'll go, there's only 10 or so series, and we can address, why don't we do that? Why don't we address each series, and then if no one has any comments, we'll move on to the next series. Okay, this is on the Board of Education budget, 1000 series, salaries, page 1. Pages 1 through 10.
Okay, I'm looking at page Roman numeral 9,
Yes.
and if I look at the difference in salaries, and it goes right down the list, administrators, teachers, and then certified salaries, non-certified. Jim, can you tell me which ones are mandated by contract and which ones aren't? The raises or the increases?
Sure. Well, our excuse me, our bargaining groups are 10 administrators, all of the 11s, which are teachers,
Right.
certified teachers. The curriculum work, no, curriculum work is not. Coaches and advisors is tied to contracts.
Okay.
That's 119.
Okay, so the curriculum work is not.
Curriculum rate is. The curriculum rate is that by contract?
Correct, yeah. The curriculum hourly rate is by contract. The number of hours anticipated is a decision by the board, by the administration.
Oh, okay, so the rate is contractual, but the amount of hours is determined by the board.
Correct.
Okay, then in the non-certified salaries, 21 is the secretary's union, 22 is custodial maintenance, 24 media aides is contract, paraprofessionals, 25 is contract, cafeteria aides is not, overtime is not, clerical part-time is not. So that would be all of the certified groups, but then, the security guards and many of the non-certified assistants are not in unions. However, their wages are set by the Board of Education.
Okay, and then in the non-certified assistant special ed, we're adding 2 positions there.
Right. Well, one of them is coming out of, and those are the behaviors. There's 2 behaviors. One of them is coming out of the special education teachers line, and the other one is coming out of the amount that's in contracted. I'm sorry.
Coming out of the special education 1111 account.
One of them is, and the other one is coming out of consultation services, which is 3238. Or I take that back. I take that back. It's on Roman numeral 10, and it's coming out of 3235, other pupil personnel services.
It's coming out of 1125.
No, if you go to Roman numeral 10,
Okay.
account 3235, other pupil personnel services,
Right.
it's coming out of that account. And the reason for that is because please, chime in here. The position of behaviorist before was or still actually is in the teachers' union. So the behaviorist position also has to be a certified teacher at this time. But what we found was it's virtually impossible. The position was open for a long time. And it's virtually impossible to find a certified behaviorist who is also a certified teacher. And so we've been funding a behaviorist out of the pupil personnel services account and subcontracting that service because we haven't been able to find a certified teacher to be able to do that. So what the board is asking to do is remove that dollar amount from 3235, other pupil personnel services, and put it into the non-certified, and we would hire a behaviorist, a certified behaviorist who's not a certified teacher at the same time. It's a shift in reality. We can't find somebody that has both certifications. And so we're looking to move that out of the certified teachers account, put it in the other non-certified assistance accounts. Similar to what we have now, occupational therapists and physical therapists that the board has in that same account, they're not certified teachers, so they're out of the other account, and that's where the behaviorists would go.
And the other one's coming out of special ed.
Correct, out of the special education teachers account.
Okay. Okay, what was your thinking on the capital improvements? There were, what was it, the Class A and the Class B, or and you guys didn't recommend the second portion that the Board of Ed approved. Okay, so were those going to be put off?
In Dr. Feaser's recommended budget to the Board of Education, we included all of the principals and Pat Bradbury's, because they get together on the priorities for each school. But our original budget included only priority number 1 for the principals and the facilities department. When the Board of Education voted, they asked us what would it cost to add the second priority as well. And that was the addition of the, I believe, $380,000 that the board added back into the budget, so that we would be able to we would be able to perform the number 1 and the number 2 priorities in the building projects.
When did you plan to do number 2? Originally, because you didn't recommend number 2, you just recommended number 1.
Right, we would have to put it off. And as we explained, every school has at least 10 priorities, but we recognize that there's only a certain amount of money that we can afford each year. It's not that the number 2 priority is not needed. They're sorely needed. But we also recognize that there's constraints on the amount of dollars that we have. So.
So number 2 was gonna get done, it just wasn't gonna get done right away.
It would get done in another year, or if there were monies at the end of the year, number 2 would get done.
And 4304, that represents number 1s and number 2s
On page,
on the
Roman
summary.
numeral 11. And so
So on the summary, I think it's the 379.60, that's the additional amount for the second priority projects.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
That's correct.
So it's a 379 and the 26, or, yeah. Yeah, okay, it's just a 379.
Right, and those projects are in the appendix pages, appendix
A21.
A21, yes.
A21.
Because you're doing all the time.
Yep, A21, so where you see the first one listed for each school, those are the ones that were included in Dr. Feaser's recommended budget, and then the second one listed for each school represent the dollar amount that was added by the Board of Education for priority number 2 for each school.
Okay, so the ones that were added were it was 379.6.
No, actually, the Board of Education added $361,500 for a total increase in that line item of $379,600. The original budget was approximately $16,000 different from what the board increased. The actual increase was $361,500.
That represents number 2.
That's correct, that's number 2.
Jim, those building projects, would those show up under the total facilities line item? Is that? I'm just looking at the summary on page 8, Roman numeral 8 of the budget. And there's an increase in the total facilities line of approximately $351,000.
Yes. Right, because if you look at, if you go to,
That ties out to the Roman numeral 11, Brian.
Which would
If you look
be,
at Roman numeral 11, the bottom, 351,860, the
Yes.
total for that page ties out to the 351,860 on the bottom.
thank you.
yeah, if you take the decreases in utilities and
Right.
net it against the increases in maintenance, it's a
Right.
difference of 351,800.
Right.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a question on that behaviorist. Do any of our teachers have the behaviorist certificates?
We do have one right now.
Just one?
There's 3 behaviorist positions,
Right.
and 1 teacher has that certification now.
But there are teachers out there that have the behaviorist certificate, right? You're indicating that you can't get a behaviorist unless you pay $74,000.
If I may, part of the,
Huh?
They said they can't get one with both.
That's what I'm saying.
Not
Right.
both, yeah.
part of the difficulty is that, so for example, the University of Connecticut was the first
Right.
school in the state to start to offer certification as a behaviorist. You got that certificate. They didn't connect it to teaching. So you have had a number of people that have gone through the UConn program, gotten their behaviorist certificate, but they're not teachers. Central has the same program, a really good program as well. There's no teaching certificate that goes with it. So the only way that a teacher would have it is that if a teacher, most likely someone who's already practicing as a teacher, goes back and gets a second
Right.
certification.
Do any of them do that?
Well, some do, but the truth of the matter is they get scooped up so fast because there's such an incredible shortage across the state.
Right, I think we should wait. Okay.
And the other thing that I'll add is that a behaviorist, a behaviorist who also has a teaching certification is tied into the teacher's contract. So that person can only make what a teacher's salary. Behaviorists are making much more money. And so anybody that has a teaching certification is probably going outside of their certification now and going into the private industry and being a behaviorist, not tied to the contract.
What do you mean, private industry, what do you mean?
I don't mean private industry, I mean going outside of
Public education.
yeah.
They could be hired by, any of the special education facilities. They work in hospitals, because you're really they're working with individual children and some, older kids and even adults that have, we're talking about significant behavioral issues. That's their specialization.
Right.
If I also may add that we've had a position posted online for 12 months now, and we've not had one viable candidate apply to even interview.
I think we have to wait until we get enough out there.
Yeah, but do these two people exist right now in those other accounts? Or they don't?
Okay. To be clear, in the contracted services, we work with an outside organization that provides us with behavioral services. It may not be the same person. If they provide us with hours of support, that's under the contracted services.
Yeah.
So that's not a single person, that's just a total that we have to end up using because we don't have somebody in-house. We go outside.
And that was in account 3235?
Correct.
The contracted services.
Correct.
And then we take one special ed teacher who exists right now
Correct.
and move that special ed teacher into being a behaviorist.
You move the funds into that, not the person. Correct.
Right, so one person exists, so they're doing it right now.
Right. I don't want to add to it, that's all.
Do you want to leave them where they are now?
Mm-hmm.
The SROs, the two that cover 3 schools, do they divide their time equally between those 3 schools, or do they spend more time at one school than the other? Is there...
Do you mind if I inject on this one too, just because I've had conversations as recently as an hour ago with our police chief. I think now the current mechanism is that there's one dedicated SRO at each of the 2 high schools, and then the 2 other SROs split their time. One splits their time between Harborside and East Shore, and one splits their time between West Shore and the Academy. The proposal that's been before the city, before this board the last several years, has been to add a 5th SRO, so that each of the 3 middle schools would have a dedicated one as opposed to a shared SRO. And there would be some provision for the academy as well. But we have not moved forward with that because there's a cost. Milford has really been at the forefront of school security over the last many years, especially after Sandy Hook. We were one of the school districts that implemented the SRO program. I think that at first there were folks on either side of the issue about bringing police officers into the schools. Some folks were in favor of it, some people were not. I think that's over the course of the last 4 years that we've had the program, there has been wide acclaim for it, that it's a program that has paid a lot of dividends, a lot of benefits. And even before Parkland happened 3 weeks ago, there was a presentation, I think February 12th of this year, at the Board of Ed meeting that I went to for a brief period of time, and they laid out what the SROs do. Above and beyond that, they laid out some of the security and safety measures that have been implemented even over the course of the last 3-4 years into our schools, and that continue to be enhanced. We just added, as you know, your board authorized another $1 million for infrastructure improvements, but our police police, our schools, really the whole community has gotten together to improve the school infrastructure from a safety standpoint with additional personnel that are dedicated to school safety. In addition to the SROs, we have a school safety officer, school safety coordinator, and other folks as well, manning the front entrances. We've hardened our schools. We have new emergency management protocols since Sandy Hook. So we've done a lot over the course of the last several years, but throughout this nation, throughout the world, especially over the last couple of weeks, there has been a cry for additional school security, additional school safety from parents. I'm a parent of kids, and when you see incidents like happened in Florida, you shudder, you get nervous, and then nothing else from an education standpoint really matters. I've had lots of conversations, even over the last 2-3 weeks, with our police chief. Over the course of the last several years, we've evaluated the SRO position, and we've gone back and forth about how we might implement the fifth one, if we should implement it, if there's the need. The police chief did not include it in his budget this year. We had those conversations. However, I think at this point he is leaning towards not adding a new police officer position, but adding a new dispatcher position, a new public safety dispatcher position to the police budget. And then one of the existing police officers, that job title would be turned into an SRO. So that's the discussions that we have had as of recently. That would be his recommendation and suggestion if we were going to move forward. I don't want to speak for him. If you want me to come back to you with some type of memorandum from the police chief, but that's been our discussions even over the last couple of weeks. So I know that we have another week before you're going to finalize the budget, but just to give you folks the most recent discussions that I've had with our police folks, that's what it is.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that was very informative.
Is there somebody at the academy? Because the last discussion, there was somebody at every school.
Well, we have 14 schools, and the SROs have probably gone to all, do go to all 14 schools, and I'll let our school folks talk about that. But their assignments are for the middle schools, the academy, and the 2 high schools. We also have a sergeant that oversees the SRO program that's also involved with school security. We have other police officers that engage in things like the DARE program. We have people on our police department force that are in the schools every day. So I don't want to limit the school interaction with just the 4 SROs that we have right now. We have a lot more police personnel that are involved on a daily basis with our schools.
Okay.
A whole host of different programs that are joint programs between schools and the police department. But we do have, at this point, 4 dedicated SROs. There's a proposal, there's $40,000 that's in the school budget to pay for half of an additional SRO. So that's what's before your board, will be before the Board of Aldermen. I know that there's a lot of discussion at public comment. There were suggestions and recommendations from the public that did come up about the additional SRO.
But they would still be part-time at each middle school and the academy.
The proposal, and again, our school personnel are here, but the proposal is, instead of the present system where we have 4 SROs, one's at Jonathan Law, one's at Foreign,
Right.
one splits their time between East Shore and Harbor Side, and one splits their time between West Shore and the academy.
So you have 2 for 4 schools, right? The
There's-
middle schools plus the academy and what was it, and Harborside, okay? So you have 2 for 4 schools, so now what we're talking about is 3 for 4 schools. Is that correct?
Yes, and there may be a shift so that the academy, and again, I don't want to get into the details, the school system may have their, their own input, but it would be,
Right.
it would be some kind of shared arrangement with the 5 schools. I can't say that there would be exactly equal time by each
Right,
SRO.
I'm not, yeah, but I know that, but you're still talking about sharing and not full-time. Even if we had one, they will not have a dedicated SRO at the middle schools and the academy.
I think for all intent and purposes, it's a dedicated SRO at each of the middle schools and each of the 2 high schools. There may be a different split in their time about how there is an SRO presence at the academy, and as well as a presence at all of the elementary schools as well. But I think that the shift would be a dedicated office SRO at each of the middle schools and at each of the high schools.
But you still have to cover the academy.
There may be a new arrangement. I don't want to speak for the police department and the schools at this point. In terms of there will be a different police presence at the academy, I would think, as well as our elementary schools. So, and in fairness, the emergency operations plan that our school system has is constantly changing and improving and being enhanced. So, even if the police chief was to sit here today with our school personnel, there may be adjustments and changes by next month, just because that's how fluid this emergency operations plan is.
Just to go back to the behaviors real quick, just so you guys know, I mean, they're not asking for much here. I actually work with a behaviorist at least once a week in my program. She is an expert in this field, and she really does help keep these kids on task, engaged, safe. Without her, I mean, her expertise is really crucial to running an orderly classroom, and she is extremely helpful. And they do case manage 30 to 40 kids, so, I mean, they're all over the district. Very busy. We keep them busy in Milford, and they really help us out as teachers in the classroom.
There's such a shortage, but the state is recommending that there be a behaviorist assigned to every school in the state,
Of course.
which is impossible, but,
Okay, Mr. Castagnoli, anything further on that point?
No.
Anyone else? We'll go back to, keep moving along. If anybody has anything to add, they can jump in any time, because as I said, it's
Just in general, yeah, hold on for a second. The very last question I asked of Susan was concerning the closing of a school. And the answer was, it was recommended, but the Board of Education decided not to go for it. My question is, we're talking a budget here of $100-something million. And I thought it was irresponsible that the Board of Education decided, it was recommended to close a school, and then the board decides, no, we're not going to do that. The schools are not all filled, Susan said, to full capacity. I think, we're talking about raising a budget again, 1.86 here, and the board just goes along, well, we're not going to even take the superintendent's recommendation. We're going to increase the budget more. Rather than acting responsibly and cutting the school, or doing another survey even, they just took it for granted that, okay, we just won't close the school. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in a budget here, that they possibly could even close 2 schools, I don't know. And that's what irritated me about these budgets the last couple of years, is that, we just decreased the budget. And I know it's not in your hands, it's the Board of Education's hands to do these things. They're elected to do this, and I think it's a fiduciary responsibility, first of all, on their part, to do the best for the city of Milford, and I find that they're not. And you go in with some programs you want to increase, I can fully understand what you want to do. But it's got, one hand has to wash the other. They have to eliminate something to get something else. This board just seems to say, you go and say, we want this, they go, okay. They don't come back and say, do you really need this? Can we do this? We can do that? No, it's just, let's increase, give whatever the parents want, whatever the, you know. And I think that's totally irresponsible, and that's why I just can't go for increases in the budget anymore. I think they should sit down and start looking at what the heck they're doing. Maybe we should have half the board be appointed that could act in a responsible manner, and the appointees would be people that have some financial background and some financial responsibilities. I find that they're not, they don't have the expertise in that area. Sure they do. They have some 3 or 4 people that are elected every year. They're right into the budget like Susan. She knows what that budget is. Jim, you know, you got into that position and then you found what we have here. And you do a super job. That's all I'm going to say there. Because you're handed what you're handed. And you have to deal with what they're saying you got to do. And that would irritate my stomach as being an auditor. Just to say, you got to find the money to do this. Enough is enough. I think we should just start looking back and say, hey, that's it. That's my total feeling on the school budget for the last 3 or 4 years. Because we did come up with the school closing thing about 3 or 4 years ago, and it may be more than that now. And it was the Harborside School. We can't close Harborside School. Who the heck is Harborside School? We got 50,000 people here paying their taxes every year, and because one group wants a Harborside School to stay open, is irresponsible. That was the school I think was projected. I may be totally wrong on that, but in any case, so that's my feeling. You know what my feeling is on the budget now, and I don't think I can discuss any further. Thank you.
Just to weigh in defense of the Board of Ed, because they won't do it themselves. Over the last 3 or 4 years that you were referencing, they have come in with extraordinarily lean budgets. To their good credit, less than a % increase over the last 3 or 4 years. This year, it's under 2%, about 1.5% increase is what's being proposed at this point. But you know, the group of administrators that seen before you have done a very good job sharpening their pencils and making sure that we do get a lot of value, enhancing educational programs at the same time they're holding the line. So
they're not holding the line. I'm sorry that they're not holding the line. They're not holding the line. If you take the school out, then you're holding the line. If you leave the school in, you're not holding the line. That's my feeling. Sure, that what they have presented, sure. They've done it fantastic. There's no question I think we have a great school system. There's no doubt in my mind. But the financial aspects of the financing is a disaster. I'm sorry, man, you just jumped on you.
Mr. Mary, Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Oh, no, I'm done.
You got the floor. Okay.
One more question.
Yes.
Did enrollment go down from last year? This budget? How many less students, you know?
For next year?
Well, yeah, for this budget that we're looking at,
I would say it's about 70.
70 less
That's
students?
well, that's projected between 70 and 80.
Right, for the whole school system.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Can I ask, what is it the student cost? I saw it somewhere and I can't pull it.
It's in the budget, it's in the...
Yeah, I know it, I couldn't find it.
It's in Appendix A18, and it's 20,000...
I'm sorry, Jim.
18.
A18, Appendix page A18, and it's 20,574.
See, this is an example of it. We have a reduction in students, yet the per cost of student keeps going up.
Well, that will happen. If
Yeah.
you're dividing the total number by less students, the
Right.
number goes up.
Thanks.
That percent enrollment, that's a net number? So if we brought it, like if we, that's a net number, I'm assuming, correct? So we're not bringing in 80 students and then losing 70, so we're at a net 10. It's net.
If you look on page Roman numeral 14. It'll be an overview of those. Roman numerals, sorry, in the front, introduction.
The gray area is where the projections are.
Right. Right. Yeah.
This is actually a lower number than it has been for the last several years. More students have so for example, a year ago when we came before you, we actually had 14.4 teacher reductions in last year's budget. And that was because there was a, pretty hefty decline, projected decline, whereas for next year, the projection is less. It's still declining, but not at all as many as it was a year ago.
183 here.
183? Okay.
Okay, again, everyone can jump in at any time, but I'm just going to move quickly through the Board of Ed budget, or through the Board of Ed budget. And if anybody has anything they'd like to address as we go through, please do so. Series 1000 salaries, page 1. Series 2000 benefits, page 11.
Just in that area, I think I asked this question, was the increase from 55 to 80,000 was a, I had my notes in there, 25,000 increase, was it?
Right, that was for the education reimbursement, and that's strictly based upon the historical from the 16-17 year. We took what we spent in 16-17 and projected it for this coming year.
Do you know what we have spent so far this year on it? 2008?
I don't have that number off
No.
the top of my head, no.
We can get it for you.
Yeah,
It goes
don't
through
need it.
personnel department. That's where somebody has to send. If I took, 3 credits last semester, I have to submit it to personnel for approval for reimbursement.
Were they ever denied?
Well, it's a limit. It's contractual. You can only take so many at a time.
Oh,
It's
I
all
got it.
contractual, both for the teachers as well as the administrators.
Okay, but they can, as long as they're within the contract, they can get the approval.
Correct.
Because we go up and down, 48, under 15, 16, 79, 55, now up to 80.
And it's strictly by how many courses are taken, how many teachers submit for reimbursement.
Okay, how much?
Okay.
Thank you.
Series 3000 contracted services.
Can we send that out by email? And I appreciate you sent that out to us. You sent that out to us, right? The email?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Series 4000 facilities. Series 5,000 transportation, tuition and other support. Educational supplies, Series 6,000.
Just gonna back up, Brian, for a
Yes.
second. On the Bridgeville Magnet Schools, in 2016-17, we had nobody attending those Bridgeport Magnet Schools?
As,
We didn't?
No, we did, but they never charged us tuition. State law allows them to charge us tuition with permission from the State Department of Education, and they decided in 17-18 to start charging tuition. They got the permission from the Commissioner of Education, and so they started charging.
Okay, that's right, okay.
Prior to that, we still had kids there, just they weren't charging us
50 of
tuition.
them, right?
Yeah,
Somewhere in that
50,
area?
yeah, correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
Series 7,000 equipment. Series 8,000 educational support, all other. Anyway, you want, right now I'm under
No, I'm done with that, yeah.
grants or appendix?
Grants, yeah.
Grants.
Under the grants, who do we have that, how does this work? Who writes up for the grants? Do we have somebody that their job is solely to write for grants, or how does that work?
There's different people, so for example, anything with special education would come under Carol Swift and her staff. Title I is Annalise Spaziano, and works with Jeff. Title II is David St. Oh, that's Annalise as well.
Title 1, 2, 3, I work with different supervisors.
Okay, so it's not a specialized job, it's just as a group working under the different areas.
We do not have a grant writer.
Now, how do we find out if there are grants available that, maybe a grant will come up, say, I don't know from where, federal government, state. How would you know if a grant is coming up or being available to us?
Well, the state, if the state has grants, they send notices out. So it'll come through me, and then immediately I'm forwarding it to, work with the right person. So the state is not an issue. They let us know, here it is, here's the RFP, this is when it opens, et cetera, and they provide all the information.
They don't hide any of these grants on us?
No.
They're mandatory that they have to let you know?
I don't know if it's mandatory, but they do let us know.
So
I don't trust them, that's why.
at least the first section of these grants are considered entitlement grants.
Right.
So it's not necessarily the grant application, it's more the data that you provide the federal government, and if the state government is the administrator. There are a lot of private grants from things like the Annie Casey Foundation or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, private grants
Right.
that are offered to educational institutions. In addition to them finding out through their professional organizations, the city does have a grant finder through our Council of Governments. So some of the grants, mostly private, are accessed through this grant finder program that we have access to.
The grant finders under COG?
We have one through the COG, actually now we have one through our Connecticut Conference of Municipalities that
Oh,
we're
yeah.
also a member of. Just other sources to locate and identify grants. But again, these are the
Right.
vast majority of them, and they're really entitlement grants.
Right. Okay, just curious.
These are the total grants that we're getting for education,
Correct.
the 3172. Okay, and we get other state grants, right, Ken?
Well, so these are the grants that come through education that are not banked into the revenue side of the budget. These are separate apart, that go directly to the schools, is that fair? We also get grants like the ECS grant every year that the school system does not see directly. We account for it as part of the city revenue. So it actually comes to the city as revenue with the expectation that the city is going to fund the local educational program.
Okay.
So last year, we got approximately $12 million for the ECS grant, and there's other grants that the state gives as well, special education funding, things like that.
Jim, are these grants netted against your total expenditures?
Yeah.
They are netted.
Correct.
Okay, so the total of 93,596 has these grants taken out.
The grants are not included in the operational funds. The operational budget is separate from the grants.
Right. So the grant funding might pay for other positions that aren't listed on the operations side. So there might be special education teachers who are paid out of the grant and not listed.
Or professional development.
And they're not listed in the operations budget?
Correct. The operations budget is what we spend on operations, and then we spend the grants, the grant money on top of that.
Oh, you spent the grant money on top of that?
Correct.
Okay. So there's another, so do you have to account for that grant money to the people who give you the grants?
Oh, sure, it's all audited, sure.
So in other words, that 3,172,000, there's a, this is the grant, this is where it's coming from, then you have another side where it's going to. And you have to tell those people that this is how you're spending their money.
Sure, yeah, it's
Sure. So for Title I, for example, we need to, there's the forms that we fill out, we work with the state, it's a federal grant, comes through the state. And there's very specific categories. This one is tied to students with need. So there's very specific schools, for example, if you have a certain percentage of students that are eligible for free and reduced lunch, we have to apply a certain amount of those funds to those schools. When there's remaining funds, we're able to use that throughout the system. So there's very specific things. Title II is professional development. There's very specific categories. We have to write up an entire justification. It's a fairly lengthy application. And then Title III is specifically for students with English language needs. And we have to lay out exactly what we're going to be doing with that. And the whole idea is, in essence, is an improvement. So we have to show that we believe these efforts will ultimately lead to student achievement improvement.
Okay, so the 3,172,000, there's a separate budget for that, operational budget or expenditure budget for that.
And you could say that way. They're accounted for. If there's a position in a school that meets the requirements of the grant, then if there's a teacher funded there, it would be paid for out of the grants rather than the operational budget.
So, in other words, none of the 3,172,000 is going to find its way into the 93,596.
Correct.
None of that.
But
This is all specific, it's all specific areas that it can be spent on. It can't be spent on
No, I realize that, but I'm just saying it's not gonna find its way into any of the 93 million.
No, it's completely separate accounts. It has to be accounted for separately, it's audited separately.
Right, so you could have a budget that shows that amount of money coming in, and an expenditure budget that shows it being spent on the things that it should be spent on what they're giving you the money for.
Yes.
And that's totally separate from the operational budget.
Correct.
Okay.
But there might be savings in the operational budget. For instance, you have a grant for out-of-town magnet transportation. We might be required to provide that transportation anyway, and if you didn't get the grant, the operating budget would be $22,000 higher.
That's correct.
So the best example in here is all the IDEA, that's all special ed, and also the preschool. I mean, that's a huge, that's probably 1/3 or more of this total amount. And if and this would apply to any district, if they didn't receive these federal monies, the cost would be astronomical for special education. I mean, if we had to pick all of this up, this is primarily in the public side of it, it's salaries.
Right.
A lot of paraprofessionals, some staff members, et cetera, is covered under this IDEA.
So the budget has taken this into account.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
All right,
But it's
so-
not, but they're separate.
I
IDEA,
know,
and then there's
but the operational budget would be much higher
much,
if you didn't get the 3,172,000, so it's already been taken into account.
Yes.
So it's really been netted.
Yes.
Right.
That's-
Okay, because the 93 million would be 96 million, and you're getting the 3, so you don't have to ask for the 96 million.
That's right.
Okay.
So these teachers that are paid under these programs, their salaries are not in here at all.
Correct.
How about their taxes, their payroll taxes at all?
There's a certain, I think I answered that question. The mayor asked that question during your, there's a small percentage that's allowable under these grants that does go for benefits, and I believe that it's paid for off the top of my head. I don't have the answers that I sent to you.
But in general,
A small percentage goes toward paying for the FICA for the employees,
right?
but the health insurance is carried on the city side of the budget. Health insurance for these employees is not in the grants.
But some of these teachers could be paid under both payrolls? People that are being paid under these grants could be under both?
Not the same person. We'd have
If it's a
one or
separate
the other.
person, that's the point I'm making.
Yeah, but we'd have to pay for that person if we didn't get the money. for that
Right.
person.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The only thing we pay for then is basically the benefits, the health benefits.
That's right.
The FICA is minimal.
So they cover the burden. We
Huh?
have to pay for the benefits. They cover the burden.
Do you know how many, do we have any idea how many employees involved under these grant programs? Just guesstimate?
it's mostly special ed, I can tell you that. If your title programs don't really have employees.
Under Title I we do.
Oh, wait, we do a Title I? Stand corrected, but not a lot.
No, there's other, we use that for other support services.
Could behaviorists be paid under this?
That's a good question. I don't know if it could be paid under the IDEA. That would be the only area where it would,
Title I,
it's in paid for behaviors?
not Title I.
No, yeah, that's what I mean, which is special education, that would be the only area that would be able to, of these grants, pay for behaviors. If it was permissible, I'd have to ask Carol.
We could save some money there, 150,000.
It is,
Then
but I
you'd
can
be-
tell you that then it's, if that 150,000 is paying for 2 teachers or 2+ teachers right now. Or so many paraprofessionals.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Appendix, which we've been back and forth on, but if anybody has any questions on appendix items?
No.
Okay, Board of Education, obviously we're not voting on anything tonight. Do we want to have any further discussion on Board of Ed tonight?
I have one more question. Jim, the number of administrators, do you know what other towns, like similar size to Milford, similar education budget to Milford, how many administrators they have? Like West Haven, Hamden, Meriden?
No, I honestly don't.
Can you just get that? Can you get that? Is that easy to get?
Should be able to.
We'll try, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Mhm.
All right.
How many administrators do we have? 33. That's including principals, huh?
Yeah, I guess so.
That's including principals. But you only have 2 in the central office?
That would be administrators?
Yeah.
Yes, well, yes, that would be in the contracts, these are contracted administrators. So you have Carol Swift, actually.
But aren't you under that? Who's under the, what area, like the 3 positions here now, what are they
The
under?
administrators are the contracted.
The three of us are we are not in a union, so we're not included in the administrators union. So the number that's in there, the 33 point
Right.
whatever it is, those are in the administrators union.
Right, now where are you under here?
Separate category.
You're not.
No,
You're not, you don't work.
no.
Work for free.
I am actually, Dr. Fieser and Mr. Burt are both in the administrator's line item for dollars, but not in the count of 33 FTE. My position is...
What page is that on, Jim?
Page
Roman
1.
numeral 15.
Actual number 1.
Under salaries, 1,000.
Oh, okay, there you are. Right.
Yeah.
Well, right there, they're not listed here, but the 33.3 is excluded.
Excluded.
Okay, I stand corrected. The 33.3 does include Dr. Fieser and Mr. Burt.
Correct.
And if you look on page 1, it's under central administration, the 2 positions.
Okay.
The last line down at the bottom.
Right.
That's Jeff Burt and me.
The where?
Right here,
On
this
page
is,
1, the last line,
That's
central
2,
administration.
right.
There's 2, that's 2
1, 2.
of us. 2 administrators.
Jimmy still managed to keep himself out of the budget.
No.
So it is, it's who's a certified administrator as defined by the state, that's what this list is.
Right, and my position is in count 1120, which is on
Page 4?
page 7.
Page 7.
So if you look at non-certified supervisors,
Right.
central administration, I would be one of those 3.
So Jim has a certification, but it's not the administration certification.
Who are the other 2 people, Jim?
That would be... the Director of Human Resources and the Business Office Manager. And then the ones that are listed under maintenance are the Director of Facilities, the Assistant Director of Facilities, and the Supervisor of Custodians.
That's on page 9. Well, the explanation.
Oh, the explanation.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
Done?
done with Board of Ed?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking us first.
Oh, you're welcome, man. Have a good evening.
You as well.
Thank you, Jimmy, very
Well, thanks for all your help.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Jimmy.
Good, move to the city side?
Yep.
Scott, what'd you think, your first Board of Ed technical session?
That's great.
Yeah, very informative. Rich didn't listen? It gets better. Okay,
It's real better.
roll up the sleeves.
It's still, it should be. Let's move to general fund revenue. That's close.
You want to start with general fund revenue
If you don't
first?
mind.
I don't mind. Okay, page 4, general fund revenue.
Jim,
Yeah, I'm ready.
get all notes?
And again, we'll do things more or less department or page by page, but if anyone wants to go back, by all means, jump in and we can address the questions or comments. Page 4.
Okay, yep.
Yes, sir, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
The ECS, is that a guesstimate,
That's
Mr.
the,
Mayor, or what?
that is the preliminary numbers that the governor came out with back in, well, because this is a biennial budget, that's the actual numbers that the legislature agreed to back, I think in October of 2017. Included in that number are some of the clawbacks or reductions that the executive branch made back in, I think, November, December of 2017. So, as I discussed about 10 minutes ago, ECS last year, we were awarded by the state about approximately $12 million, but then there was some administrative rescissions or holdbacks, so that the final number was only like 10,867,536. So a little over $1 million less than what we were awarded. So it wasn't actually $12 million that we are receiving from the state. It was about approximately $11 million or 10.8.
And this year, it's projected to be approximately $750,000 less than what we actually received last year?
This is a short session of the legislature. Every other year is a short session because it's just a budget adjustment. As you know, there's challenges still that continue with the state of Connecticut. That's the amount that the legislature approved, including the executive adjustments from November, December. We don't know what will be the ultimate number, but these are good guesses. Guesses based on facts and figures and things that we think that are important to go into the estimate.
We could be pretty confident that we won't be getting any.
Well,
more
we don't
money.
know.
More money than
There
that?
were huge swings back and forth. The last legislative session, the last legislation session was supposed to end at the very beginning of June, and it didn't adopt, the legislature didn't adopt the budget until October. So absent clairvoyance, I don't know if we're going to know what we can expect this session either, but we put our best guess forward.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Okay, page 5. General fund revenue, state pilot grants, general purpose state grants,
The
and
general
special
state,
purpose.
what is that? I don't even know what that is. The stabilization. What is that item? I don't have.
That's a new grant that the state came up with this last year.
Last year, yeah.
It kind of supplanted the MRSA grant, which disappeared. So we used to get money from it was called the Municipal Revenue Sharing Account, but they got rid of that grant. That grant was actually tied to some deliverables. This new grant is not.
Hmm. Okay.
Is there revenue in here from the portion of the sales tax? Wasn't there some benefit that the state was
That was
proposing to give to the towns?
That was the Mercer grant,
That was the Mercer grant.
and they got rid of that. So at this point, the cities are not receiving any Mercer money.
Whoa. And that was a huge reduction, right, from what we used to receive on that line item? Okay.
The Mercer money, I think, was split up into 3 categories at the statewide level. One of the categories paid for motor vehicle tax for those municipalities. It was supposed to be, initially it was supposed to be, I think it's municipalities that had a mill rate over 39, and then it got reduced to a mill rate over 37. It was actually supposed to go all the way down to municipalities that had a mill rate over 32. But that didn't apply to Milford, so we didn't get a portion of that Mercer money. Other Mercer money was for payment in lieu of taxes for property that was state-owned. I don't think we got really a share of that either, but we did get this municipal revenue sharing that has since disappeared.
That's what I was thinking of, the property tax relief municipal revenue share, that's right.
Yep, it disappeared, but again, a new grant was put in its place, this stabilization grant,
Right.
which isn't tied to deliverables.
Okay.
What was tuition from others? Is that the ones that kids coming to our school, they pay to us?
Correct.
That's on page 6, 3522. Up in the right.
Yes, that's, in some cases, the Board of Ed does collect tuition from.
So now we're gonna collect it. We're generous again, okay.
Well, we just not budgeting anything. I think this year
We
they-
just haven't budgeted because it's not always,
not enough to
you
worry
can't
about.
always guarantee that we get it.
Yeah,
But
okay.
we have been receiving it
Okay.
this year.
And the revenue from the town of Orange for reimbursement for the animal controls, is
That does not go into the general fund, it goes into a special revenue fund, Fund 76, dedicated for animal control.
and that would be for buying vehicles or things like that?
We did just buy a vehicle out of that money this year. It's the first vehicle we've purchased out of that money. It also goes to some overtime, and it also goes to other projects and other there in that vicinity, in the realm of animal control. We actually have a decent amount of money because there has not been a lot of money utilized out of the account. One of the projects that we're looking to utilize that money for is enhancements or improvements to the dog park. There's a proposal by the Animal Control Commission to make improvements, and actually I do know that Public Works was there today putting additional topsoil in that area because there's a lot of flooding and it's mucky, so they're going to replace some fencing and put additional topsoil to make it less likely to be soggy and flood.
We're gonna keep them there, right? They were talking about moving that place,
So the
down to North Street.
Yeah, over by your neighborhood.
That's what I don't want.
So the proposal right now is that it's going to expand and enhance in the same site it's at.
Thank you. I can't stand dogs. Especially yours. My dog's nice. Oh, yeah, okay. Just ask them. Okay.
Sale of real estate, do we anticipate any property being sold this year? That you can talk about?
the big proposal for next year, and we are putting it out, we have put it out for RFQ, is the property, the 2.2 acres between High Street and River Street. The property that we got a state grant for, we got $5 million to purchase it. We have a proposal to work with the developer, and the developer we're going to select based on a whole host of factors, mostly improvements to the downtown and enhancements to the downtown. But that developer, we may sell the property to, we may lease the property to, we may come up with another arrangement for that piece of property. So there is the possibility that next year we could have a large sale of property, or at least from a dollar standpoint.
Okay. Thank you.
Any projections on lot property? Nothing, just stay status quo?
Say that again?
The plot property, where all the orchard is,
So actually,
they're working it today.
they're trimming some trees, just I think there were some leaders that were coming down that were blocking things. They have secured that building. They are looking, we're working with the Golf Course Commission, the Arts Council, to come up with a event space for the golf course, and to potentially expand it, some golf holes on the Orchards Golf Course. And a lot of it, we're working with our open space director too, to try to get some of those apple trees back in action. You're gonna have to plant, actually probably, they're past their prime, so it's not that you can resurrect those apple trees. You're gonna have to take them out and plant new ones.
No. You have to graft to the old tree. They gotta get the horticultural kids from,
They got Novelli, they got some of the local,
don't trust the Novelli.
well, I'm just saying, they got some of the local farmers to weigh in,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that was their
that was,
recommendation.
yeah, I
so.
think it is, yeah. That's a shame.
All right.
You should have the kids up there doing it.
Yeah.
Summer
Sounds like you're
job.
volunteering.
Summer job, they could have been trimming those bushes,
I know.
those trees, they're bushes now.
All right.
Okay, I think I'm over here. The appropriated fund balance, I think I will leave that alone.
Okay.
I don't want to discuss
Anything further on revenue side?
that.
Okay.
Here we go.
I'm going to do general fund revenues, but we'll start with page 14. For each department. I'm going to move it along, but again, if anybody has a question and they want to stop me, please do. Board of Aldermen, 4111. Elections, 4112. Register of Voters, 4115. Milford GATV, 4116. Mayor's Office, 4121. General Expense, 4122. Community Development, 4123. City Clerk, 4129. Law Department, 4131. Ethics Commission, 4132. Probate Court, 4133. Board of Finance, 4141. DPLU, 4142.
Mr. Chairman, do you see the handout that Peter had passed out
Yes.
earlier this evening?
Thank you. Okay, so this will be, so for our meeting on Next Wednesday, we'll have a substitute page with numbers, is that the
Yes.
plan?
Yes, that's the plan.
All right, thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
And as we go through the accounts, if there's other adjustments that you'd like to take into consideration, whether the whole board votes for them or not, if you want to just notify Peter so that he can have those pages printed out with the proposals.
Yes, that would be helpful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if anybody has any significant changes, and again, that we need to create technical or other changes, let Peter know so we can proceed appropriately. 4143, Board of Assessment Appeals, 4144, Zoning Board of Appeals, 4145, Pension Board, 4146, Flood and Erosion Board, 4147, Tree Commission, 4151, Civil Service Commission, 4153, Parks Beach Recreation, 4155, Economic Development, 4156, Conservation Commission, 4159, Veteran Ceremony and Parade Commission, 4160, Housing Board of Appeals, 4161, Housatonic River Estuary Commission, 4162, Open Space, 4193, Public Library, 4210, Finance Department.
Yeah, I'd like to reduce this Director of Finance salary. Is that all right, Peter?
Yeah, it's too much fun.
Too much fun,
Attending
yeah.
these hearings.
Yeah, he does his
All
homework.
right. Now, Peter, actually on that point, and not your
Yeah.
salary, but on the department, to refresh my recollection, are we full at this point for positions, or are we still looking for some?
No, we're still, we have a vacant clerk A in the tax office.
Okay,
And I believe that's it.
Okay.
We've had a lot of turnover recently, but we finally filled the 2 accounting clerk positions in January. So we have one clerk A vacant in the tax office.
okay. Good. Good work. MIS 4215.
Do we have any, that was a major increase of the software and maintenance under management MIS, under 4796.
Right. Correct.
Yeah,
For the Munis.
Huh?
The new Munis.
the
software.
Munis system.
The bulk, the whole increase is not entirely munis, but the bulk of it is the
Bulk of it is,
the
okay.
majority of that increase is munis, not all of it, but the bulk of it.
Yes.
Okay.
4219, excuse me, Human Resources. 4310, Police Department.
Well, I have a question, Peter, where would, if we fund the SRO, where would that go?
It would go, it depends on which proposal you accept. I mean,
The discussion that the chief and I had was that we would take an existing police officer position and turn that into a police officer, school resource officer. If you look at the page 50, there are 4 police resource officer positions presently.
Right.
And perhaps the position right above that, we would supplant an SRO for a police officer. And at the same time, increase the number of public safety dispatchers. Now, in this police department budget, some of the positions that are labeled dispatcher are fire dispatchers, some of them are police dispatchers, and some of them are public safety dispatchers. The new hires are all public safety dispatchers, have the training and the certification to do both. That's what we would hire a public safety dispatcher that would be able to dispatch both police and fire, and so we would add an additional dispatcher. The rationale behind that is that presently, at any given time, there is almost always a shortage in the dispatcher on the police side, and they supplant the open position that they can't fill through overtime with a sworn officer, an officer who has all the training through post and has all the expense of being a sworn officer, not only the salary of, starting salary of $65,591, but also, you know, all the additional costs that go into training a police officer and maintaining their certification. A dispatcher also has certifications that are costly, but not as much, and the salary is a little bit less. It's $45,000 starting salary as opposed to $65,000. And there are other benefit adjustments as well.
So a police officer at around 70 would be funded half by the Board of Ed, and the rest would come from the police budget.
That's been the agreement that we've had with the Board of Ed.
We saved the 40 there, right? The
Yes.
police. And then we hire a dispatcher for 50.
Yes.
So basically, the 40 from the Board of Ed would cover the dispatcher.
Essentially. But again, it's all the same pot of money. It's coming out of the, it's coming out of the school budget, but it's all taxpayer funds, so. Yes, the agreement has been that the Board of Ed covers half the cost of a police officer, and the accounting way that we do that is that at the end of the fiscal year, the Board of Ed cuts a check to our finance director, and the finance director then deposits that in the general revenue fund.
Right.
So any given year, there should be a baseline of 200,000, well, should be a baseline of 4 times $40,000, so $160,000 as a surplus for our city budget, because we have that coming back at the end of the fiscal year. If there's a 5th police officer, that would be arguably $200,000 back to the city budget.
How many years does it cost you? I thought it's every year. The Board of Ed pays for half of the.
Every year.
Oh, I thought it was
They agree to every year to reimburse us.
Well, I got the sense from both the fire chief and the police chief that they were both felt that a dispatcher / communications agent was necessary, and particularly if we're paying a police officer for 50% more in salary to do a job that could be done at a relatively lower wage, and there's a need. And we can address the school resource officer position along the lines of what the mayor proposed. I would certainly be in favor of adding a communications agent.
But what do you do with that police officer's position? If that police officer becomes an SRO, what happens to his position? Is it vacant?
So what I'm trying to convey is that at any given time, there is a sworn police officer presently in the dispatch center, filling the need for an additional dispatcher.
Okay.
Which means that police officer is not, he or she is not on the streets.
So we wouldn't have to fill that position?
So we would not be adding, in terms of new positions to the budget, we would not be adding a new police officer position. We would be adding a dispatcher position, and Peter would make the adjustment in the budget book that one of the police officer positions is going to be defined as a SRO position, or a school resource officer position.
And that current officer would basically not be a new position, it would just be a reallocation
But
of his
nobody
duties.
would be hired to take his place, what I'm getting at. That it doesn't create a vacancy.
And just for clarification, a school resource officer is still a police officer.
Right.
They are a full-strength police
Right,
officer,
yeah.
so it wouldn't be adjusting the number of police officers that we have. It wouldn't be reducing it, it would be the same number of police officers that we had in the city.
Right. Right, but he'd have a different designation. I just want to make sure that, you know, we're not going to go out and hire somebody to replace that once he becomes an SRO. We're not.
there would be a new position in order to do that.
We couldn't because we wouldn't be inserting a new police
Right.
officer line item.
Right,
But
right,
we would
yeah.
be inserting
Right.
the dispatcher, so we'd
Right.
have to hire
Right.
a new dispatcher.
Well, when we say dispatcher, we are, if you.
I meant public, well, the new term is public safety dispatcher.
Right.
But
Does
it
that-
would be the grade 23 because grade 23 is the police dispatchers union.
Right.
And I believe over time, everyone will be, through it, would be my grade, would be in that grade,
Yes.
23.
And that would be-
The other set without the 23, those were the fire dispatchers that came over into the police.
And as the
budget.
mayor indicated, the new hire would be able to serve both the police and the fire calls.
All new hires are being hired as public safety dispatchers. yeah.
Okay.
So we would have to increase this budget by 50,298 roughly,
Roughly.
right?
It might be a little lower because I'll likely insert it at the minimum.
Oh, right.
Okay, so it'd be a little
It'll
lower.
be close to that 45,000, maybe a little
Right.
less than 45.
Does that mean that the Board of Ed only has to cover half of 45, or do they give us the 40?
Well, no,
No.
the agreement has been for an SRO, they pay half. And we
Okay.
would be including an additional SRO in the budget as well.
Okay, all right,
It would just supplant an existing police officer.
okay.
And again, it's, the police, it would still be a police officer, it'd just be a police
Yeah.
officer.
Right, right.
Two
SRO.
resignations.
Right.
Well, I would suggest that Peter prepare that revision.
Right, I mean, I just want to make sure that it's the good deal I think it is.
So we're approving the,
Well,
School.
as you said, it's one hand paying the other. No, we're not, the school, no, with the school budget, they're gonna spend their money the way they wanna spend their money.
Right,
But they've committed to spend 40,000
Right.
out of that to reimburse an additional portion of the additional SRO.
Right.
And we would simply add a new dispatcher.
Right.
And then the mayor and the chief would reassign existing
so
officers.
basically the Board of Ed would be paying 90% of the new dispatcher.
God, they'll never want me to cut their budget. They don't want
Well,
me to cut their.
that's a different topic.
Oh,
That's not joking.
oh, okay. So we're going for an SRO.
Well, no, we're gonna add a
Dispatcher.
dispatcher. Well, I guess it would be an SRO as well.
SRO as
Changing
well.
the title.
Yeah, it
Right.
would
Change
also
the title
include
to
changing,
SRO.
changing a title of one police officer to SRO.
Right,
And then the dispatcher.
okay, and then we add a dispatcher.
Well, I would request Peter to prepare that change for final discussion and vote. And then if the mayor has any further input from the chief on that issue, he can let us know.
That look good?
At our next meeting.
Oh,
You look good?
say again?
Does that look good?
As long as your board is okay with that, that will be the recommendation. But
Okay.
I was not here for the police department's presentation, but I've had many conversations with our.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think he was generally in favor of it. I got the sense that he.
Mm-hmm.
He was, right.
Yeah, he was,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
he was, yeah. Yeah.
Boy, we're gonna spend more money. Board of Ed's gonna spend more money, they're gonna spend more money.
Ready?
My
Here's your argument.
Okay, go.
There's still not an overall increase in positions though on
Yeah.
this side of the budget, even if you do add this.
Well, there's some things.
Yeah, we're
Because
some things you need to
we're making
do.
some reductions.
Right, exactly.
Well, actually, we are increasing to 140 now, right? By adding this.
The overall city budget, not the police department budget, the
The police
overall city
budget,
budget.
The overall.
Yeah,
Yeah,
No, no net new positions.
right. Excellent. All right. If nothing further on police, fire, 4320. Emergency management, 4331. Animal control, 4340.
We just talked about that.
Yes. Lighting hydrants water, 4360. Public Works, 4420.
Just a second, you still fighting with the water company on this thing? Worthless, huh?
We are. There was a special committee of the RWA, or the RWA Policy Board, that they formed to look at this specific issue at our request. I testified at a couple of their meetings, or at least one of their meetings, and had many meetings with their CEO. And they hired a consultant to review it, and ultimately there was no change adopted. So we still are paying a considerable amount just to have water available to the fire hydrants, whereas a lot of other municipalities across the state that have a different system. For example, the MDC up in Hartford, the Hartford area, you know, a town like West Hartford that has similar size to Milford, they pay 0 for their fire service. Milford pays 1.5.
Can we go to court on that at all?
We've looked into it. If we could, we would.
Yeah.
The issue is legislatively.
Yeah.
Legislatively at the policy board, I guess administratively, legislatively, the policy board that adopts the revenue figures for the Regional Water Authority would have to change their system. Right now, the balance difference between the NBC and the South Central Regional Water Authority is that up in the Hartford area, the municipalities don't receive any type of pilot money, payment in lieu of taxes for the infrastructure that the water authority has. You know, lines and reservoirs and things like that. The towns like West Hartford, they do not receive any compensation for. Milford, we do receive a small amount of compensation, about $400,000, but then we pay about $1.3, $1.4 million in our fire service. So we would rather have the deal that a town like West Hartford has, where they don't get anything from the water company, but they don't pay anything. A town like Milford, it's not a net neutral system. We're paying a lot more.
Yeah. Thank you.
Highway Parks, 4421. Building Maintenance, 4423. Engineering, 4424. General Garage, 4429. Solid Waste, 4431.
You know, solid waste, did we eliminate a position?
Yes.
One position? Okay.
Just as a heads up, the recycling world is changing. Our recycling contract for the tipping fee that we've had for the last several years, the contract is expiring. My guess is that instead of receiving $20 a ton, like we presently do, we are likely going to have to pay money. A lot less than the $61 that we pay for solid waste, but the recycling world has changed. What's happening is that the single stream recycling is being shipped off to China. China is becoming a lot more strict as to what they allow in. The recyclable materials that are going over to China, some of them are getting kicked back, entire loads full, because they're not the type of recyclable materials, or they're intermixed in a way that they can't process them in China. So that is changing the dynamics, and perhaps what we're going to be receiving or have to pay for getting rid of the about 4,000 to 5,000 tons of recyclable materials that we dispose of every year for recycling. So we're at this point, I don't have a figure to give you, but it may be something that the Board of Aldermen will look at or make an adjustment on. And you'll see it next year.
Well, our tipping fees went down significantly from what they were 5 or 6 years ago anyway, so they,
The tipping fees went down for two reasons. One, because solid waste tipping fees, we got rid of the CRA, which was like a middleman,
right.
and we joined a new consortium. And also, the recycling, instead of getting nothing, we're getting about $20 a ton, so that offsets it.
Right.
Actually, that's just revenue.
That's revenue, right, but less material. Public debt service.
While we're gonna say, Mary, the nitrogen credits, do we get any?
That's all the way in the back in the
Is that
south, the
in the
sewer
revenue
area.
area that, oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And I think that Peter does not, he gets it,
Yeah,
you got it yet?
yeah, when we get it, actually, you don't see it here, it goes into the debt service reserve fund per the Board of Aldermen's resolution. When that fund was created, the nitrogen credits have to be deposited there. And that goes to offset our sewer debt service
Right.
over time.
But the number from the previous year appears in the budget under the expenses, and it's always a number in brackets.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, if it is indeed a
revenue.
payment as opposed to a cost, it'll be in brackets. So this
This year it's 0, right?
year, it'll have a number associated when Peter receives it. Have you received the number yet?
Well, the expense is 0, we're not paying anything for.
This year, I think we're in the positive, so we're getting paid not as much, I don't think, as last year, but we're on the being paid side as opposed to the cost side.
Right, okay.
Public debt service, 4503. Page 78. Health Department, 4610. Health Department seems to be very busy and active these days.
Still doing it.
Yes. 4620, Recreation Department.
Okay, we got about 153,000 last year, and we got about 96,000 this
That's cool.
in credits money.
Does that mean my tax showing my sewer's gonna go down?
No, it means that $110 million we spent on new sewer plants is going to be paid for. Right?
Well, you always tell me that.
Recreation Department, 4620. Employee benefits, 4710.
Offhand, Peter, do you know what the balance is in the post-employment benefits?
Yes, it's a little over $6 million in the OPEB trust.
We're in the 12th year?
We started the trust, I think, 2012, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But we've been, prior to the trust, we were putting in money into a fund.
Oh, that's right.
And now it's up to, a little over $6 million.
Well,
Good to have.
long way to go. Okay.
Insurance and bonds, 4720. Claims and refunds, 4740. Benefit salary reserve, 4790.
Getting back claims and refunds, Peter, the heart and hypertension claims, are those past claims?
No, they could be related to past activity, but they are claims that we have to pay each year.
The workers' comp rules, I'm sorry, the legislation changed so that only fire and police officers who were on the job prior to, I think it's October 1st, 1996, are eligible for heart and hypertension.
That's what I thought. I thought
So,
they cut that down.
It's fire and police officers that we had on the job prior to 1996. So
Right.
there's still some active fire and police officers that started before 1996.
Okay,
And then there's also the retirees that are still eligible for heart and hypertension.
right. Okay, but if they started after 96, there is no heart and hypertension.
Yeah, I think it's October,
That's what I thought.
either 1st or
Okay.
15th,
All right.
1996.
Okay.
Unallocated contingency, 4799. Council on Aging, 4801. Milford Fine Arts Council, 4803. CMed, 4805. Regional Mental Health, 4807. Borough of Woodmont, 4811.
Cut it. I want it 230. Anybody for it?
I don't think, is there any sentiment for change on Woodmont?
Woodmont.
Oh, would not.
And keep it at 230,000.
I think you're alone, you're the
I'm a
only,
lone vote on
you're the
that.
lone vote on that one, I
You're the
think.
lone ranger.
So you want to
We
cut
like-
it?
Where's
You want to
Tonka?
cut it
Cut it to-
beyond?
Yeah, keep it at 230. It's always been. I think that was sufficient.
We admire your independence.
Oh, man.
They're not going to be invited to Woodmont Day.
Oh, I take care of my little cart,
Nope,
Nope.
my little red wagon.
nope.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, Joe.
That's
4812, Transit Authority. Bridges, 4813. Veterans Graves, 4815. Milford Flotilla, 4816. Human Services Department, 4817. Historic District, 4818. Milford Progress, 4819. Historic District Commission, Historic District 2, 4820. Health Services, 4821. Cemetery Association, 4822. Bethel Center, 4825. Boys and Girls Club, 4826. Literacy Volunteers of Southern Connecticut, 4827. 4828, Milford Preservation Commission, 49.
Mr. Chairman, we have a slight change to Milford Preservation Commission. We're basically doing a reclassification,
Yes,
as I outlined on the summary. Taking $350 from secretarial fees and creating a new advertising account with $350 put in.
okay.
And that's based on the Board of Finance transfer you did at the last meeting, so I figured we'd fix the budget going forward, since it's something that the commission will be doing, I believe, going forward.
Excellent. Any questions? Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
4992, private school textbook, 4993, education audit fees, 4994, school debt, 4995, education employee benefits.
Peter, what's the total education budget if you include, you know, these amounts here?
Oh, yes, I have that in my sheet. Oh, you want the total actually, I have it on the computer, but I think it's printed in the front of the book.
What page is that, Peter?
Page 13.
13, yeah.
And again, in addition to what appears in page 13, there is also the grants that appear at the end of in the appendix of the Board of Ed book.
So you see that total of about 27
27.
million?
27?
27 million.
So if I add the 27 to the 93, was that about 120, the total education?
And then the mayor's also referencing the
G1.
grants, the appendix.
It's actually not appendix.
Oh,
It's,
I'm sorry.
So 120 and we get
Grants detail.
Grants detail.
$3 million, so it's like 117.
No, it's plus, it's 27 plus 193 plus 3, it's
Yeah.
125,000, 1 million,
So you're adding
125 million,
Mhm.
excuse me.
25.
27.
93 plus the 27
Right.
plus the 3 that they have a grant, separate grant funding.
All right, because that's not in the 93, so,
Yeah.
yeah, so that would be added, okay. All right. So 23, 124, okay.
Education operations, obviously, we'll spend some time discussing that on next Wednesday, 4997, education health insurance contribution. 4998, education health services, school nurses. Okay, the funds, sewer fund. 4154 sewer commission. 4426 wastewater. Now, Mr. Mayor, refresh my recollection, is that superintendent of wastewater currently vacant?
Yes, well, there is a, there is an acting superintendent.
Who was in there?
Jim Cooper, and then Edward Kozowski.
Yeah, what happened to him?
Retired,
He retired.
He's not that old. God, what a life. Really, huh? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
All right, let's see, 4790 benefit salary reserve, 4799 unallocated contingency. Enterprise fund, 4157 marina enterprise revenue. 4157 harbor commission. 4121 golf course. Okay,
Petey.
I think we had a good productive meeting. I don't know if we'll see everybody next Wednesday unless someone else has anything else they'd like to add tonight.
And if there are any adjustments between now and the final vote that you'd like Peter to prepare, again, you could just make them on the fly, but in order for Peter to more easily process that, so we're not here all night long, if you want to email Peter, maybe email Peter and email the chair. You just can't email everybody because that is not consistent with the FOIA rules.
Well, let me just, for clarity's sake, we made a few technical changes and one substantive change to the city side budget. Does anybody anticipate any further revisions to the city side budget?
No.
Anything further there? So that really leaves us with discussion on Board of Ed for next week, and then obviously that's a separate number that we just going to insert.
Yeah, Board of Ed is easier because it'd be just a lump total. Mr. Chairman, when you have a moment, if I could comment on an earlier question about the leases in the marina, the concessions account.
Yes, please.
We looked into it, we talked to the city attorney's office and also Ray Swift's office, and Milford Boat Works lease renews every 5 years, and the current lease runs to 2020. And Goody's, that lease renews every year. It expires this November, and they wish to renew, so that hopefully will renew. And then there, I believe Scooby-Doo's is there, but we're not sure, we don't quite have the lease terms on that. We've been making inquiries, and Ray's looking at it.
So Greaves is Gulf Beach, or is that? Or is that?
Another lease, which is I think a 50-year lease, is also the Coast Guard Auxiliary.
Right.
How about the boat?
Good.
The boat, do they pay anything?
That goes towards the marina budget.
Revenue, that's
Their revenue coming in from.
So Lisbon Landing is strictly a transient marina,
Right.
other than commercial fishing boats.
Right.
So commercial fishing boats, they're the only seasonal customers. The rest of the marina is dedicated to transients.
Right. But the commercial, they do pay it.
Yes.
Have we ever considered like leasing a food truck site somewhere down by the boat ramp or in the harbor or?
We do it for special events. It's tricky because a lot of the brick and mortar stores and restaurants
Every day.
that pay a lot of money and pay a lot of taxes, they do get, they're contributing a lot to the downtown and the vibrancy of the downtown. And we do it in small doses. For example, there's a hot dog cart that's traditionally been down there. It's not there right now. The other thing is that there are rules. So there's an ordinance that governs food trucks in Milford, and there's a lot of rules associated with where they can be stationed, how far away from a school they have to be. So you have Harborside downtown, you have to be X amount of yards away from public schools, or maybe public and private. So there are rules that govern food trucks and other things like that, but you see them a lot for the single day events.
Right. Okay.
I want a hot dog.
Dogtown, delicious.
Dogtown, that's right.
Right, good stuff.
Oh, man. That guy, how much did he pay for that article in the Register? Come on.
It's genius.
Yeah.
You even have by
Yeah.
like the plate
Just
lights out the door.
You
Yeah.
see what they put on that hot dog? Come on.
Okay, anything
You want me to
further?
wait them?
Bye.
See you Wednesday
See
night.
you on Wednesday.
Thank you all.
Bye.
All right.
Yep.
I'm missing a prep game.
Come on,
Right.
2 hours.
Nobody. Then Wednesday night you're playing.
Peter may have some technical corrections too for,
They're playing team number 6.
once he talks to the actuaries and everybody else.